Hey, what is going on, guys? Alex here and welcome back to my channel. If it's your first time tuning in, first of all, welcome. And my channel is all about upgrades and modifications on my 3rd gen Toyota Tacoma TRD Pro and also some off-roading adventures. So if you're into that type of thing, you've come to the right place, and please do me a solid by subscribing to my channel. So go ahead and hit that subscription button below. In today's video, we'll be addressing some tire rubbing issues that I'm now experiencing after I installed a front bumper guard and a winch and also an LED light bar about 2 months ago. So let me just roll the intro and I'll see you on the other side. In order to address the drop, I decided to go with a leveling kit by Tuff Country, and we have all the materials needed for this install. And as far as the main components from this kit is concerned, we have the strut spacer for the front and the add a leaf for the rear, and the rest of the hardware that's needed to do the install. And as far as tools are concerned, we have a strut spacer, we have a torque wrench, we have wrenches, we have sockets, gloves, safety glasses, and also impact guns. And I did the measurements prior to the install, and as you can see here, the front for the driver and the passenger sides are both at 35.25 inches, and also in the rear for both the driver and the passenger sides are at 36 inches. So we'll see what happens after we do our install. This whole kit cost me about just under $300. I decided to go with this because I did not want to spend $3,000-$4,000 on a lift kit right now. So that will be something that I'll be doing down the road when I decide to go with a 35-inch tires and also more serious off-roading. So this kit will hopefully do the trick for now, and I just want to get rid of that rubbing so I won't be damaging the wheel well truck and also the tire. So stick around and let's do the install together. I just want to mention also that I tried to look for an instructional video on how to do this install on YouTube, but unfortunately I couldn't find anything, so I will be relying on this installation manual solely. So I'm gonna do this step by step, and hopefully everything works out. So now I'm going to prep the truck, make sure that we have our chocks, our stand supports, and lift the truck properly. And the first thing that I want to do obviously is take out that skid plate and take it from there. So in order to remove the skid plate, it's being held by 6 bolts. We have 2 in the back, 2 in the middle, and 2 in the front. And the 2 bolts in the rear are 12 millimeters, and the other 4, the middle and the front, are 17 millimeters. So let's take our impact gun and take it out. Now you can easily access the bottom of the engine bay from this point. So after removing the tires and the wheels, we now need to remove the strut and the spring assembly. And the first thing to do is to disconnect the upper control arm from the spindle right here. And there's a cotter pin and I believe a 19 millimeter nut that we need to take out. Just loosen it up, but don't take it out all the way. We'll be using a 17 millimeter socket for this nut and bolt right here, and to avoid it from spinning, I'm going to be using a vice grip to hold it while I undo this nut. I just need to tap this part right here to break it loose from the UAC. Before I undo the whole thing, I'd like to loosen up the ABS line so we don't stress it. We'll just use a 10 millimeter socket for this. There's one up here and another one right here. And there's also a clip. Just need to pinch it and pull it right out. There you go. So now we have a lot of play to be able to have more flexibility working around this whole thing. Now we got to do the other side as well. We can now separate the spindle from the upper control arm and just slowly lower the jack that's supporting the rotor, like so. Make sure that it doesn't fall off so you won't stress any of the brake lines. So now that we've done the same thing to the other side, it can now come off easily, and we can move the sway bar out of the way to give us access to shock assembly. Now it's time to take out the nuts that's holding spring and strut assembly up top. There's 3 of them. Now we have to remove the lower strut assembly right here, which is a 19 millimeter nut. There we go. Now we'll take out the other side and we can start installing our spacer. Now that we've taken out our shock assembly, it's now time to take out the spring out of the strut. So before we do that, we want to mark the top of the spring, this rubber mount and the top plate. Just mark it with a line just to make it easier when we return it or we piece it back together again. Now, in order to remove the spring from the strut, we need a strut spring compressor. Please note this is pretty dangerous to use, so make sure to follow instructions and take extra precaution when doing this. I would highly suggest that you point this away from you when disassembling, so in the event that things go wrong, at least it go this way instead of towards you. Using a 17mm socket, remove the top nut. Just be careful with the dust boot. It's kind of hard to take it out while it's in there, but just slide it out carefully. So now that we got it out, remove the dust boot. Now install the spacer. Make sure that the coil shelf is facing upwards, like so. And it's time to return the dust boot. Give this a little clean. And then reinstall. Reinstall the washer. Look for your markings and line them up. There you have it. Our spacer's installed. Now it's time to put it back in the truck. So now it's time to put everything back together. It's just a matter of doing everything in reverse. So I'm starting in the passenger side. I always like using some red Loctite. Torque to 55 foot-pounds. Now it's time to reconnect the spindle. Reinstall the cotter pin. Just reinstalling the ABS line. Now it's time to tighten the lower strut mounting bolt down here and torque that down to 85 foot-pounds. Now it's time to double check our work. Just make sure that we don't have any extra nuts and bolts lying around. Control arm, lower strut mount, upper control arm, we didn't touch this, ABS line. Don't touch this. Yeah, everything looks good, so we'll do the same thing on the other side, and that would be it for our install. Now I need to install my differential drop sleeves, which is these babies right here, and all I got to do is undo the bolts that's holding the bracket mount for the front differential, and it's this one over here and the other one's right over here, and we'll install the new bolt and the diff sleeve in between the bracket and the cross membrane, and that's pretty much it. So we can discard the old bolt, and we need to retain this supersized washer. Just slide in the sleeve in between. So there you have it. That's our sleeve installed in between cross member and the front diff bracket. And we'll do the same thing on the other side. And we have the new bolts for the back and the spacer. Okay, so now all the spacers are installed. Just need to replace our skid plate, and that's it for the front install. So our strut spacer installation is now complete on the front end, and it took me a little longer than anticipated. I had to follow the installation manual, as I did that on the passenger side, and it's a lot harder than the way I showed you. So the instruction tells you to remove the cam bolts, the steering knuckles separated from the lower control arm, and it is pretty easy to remove, but putting it back together is a pain in the you know what. So I highly recommend just following the way I showed it to you, and you should be fine. I took it out for a spin, and rubbing is definitely gone. And I measured the height. It's measured at 37 inches right now. So I expect that to drop a little bit further. So I'll do that in the next few days. And I also need to do an alignment after the fact. So stay tuned for that. I also want to add, and I want to mention that one of the reasons why I went with this leveling kit is because of the fact that I have the Fox 2.5 shocks, which is TRD tuned, and I don't want to put that to waste. I want to keep using it because it's a very good system both for daily driving and off-roading. So I'll do a full upgrade sometime in the future. Next up, I'll be doing the add leaf installation for the rear suspension. So please stay tuned for that. I'll be creating a separate video for that install. And I hope that this video was helpful to you guys. If you have any questions or comments, please go ahead and put them down in the comment section below. And until the next time, but for now, if you can be anything, might as well be nice.